Ugh, I gotta say, it's amusing how many people seem to get rather peeved about opinions that don't go with the popular trend. And I gotta say, like, I'm always fine debating my placements of these or my opinions on them, but there's a huge difference between, like, I don't agree, here's what I think, and the more recent one was saying, oh, you didn't place it high enough because you clearly didn't understand what the game was about. Sad. And seriously, if you're gonna spurg out, do it on your own time. But speaking of spurging out, let's talk about something that I know is going to make people spurg out. Probably just as much, if not more so, than the Mario one I did back in the day. Not COVID. So, the Ratchet and Clank series, I actually didn't get into until fairly later in its life. I was around the time the remake came out. I rented it, and I ended up really enjoying the game, and that's what got me into the series. I played the original trilogy after that, and I did it on the HD collection for the PS3. I don't know if that's a bad version to play, but I am assuming it's fine. So first we're going to talk about the original and the remake at the same time. Although honestly, it's more of a reimagining. Because, yeah, the movie. And by the way, I didn't even know the movie was a thing when I played that game. I didn't even know that. I didn't even watch the movie until like I had played all the other games except for like Rift Apart, because I didn't play that one until last year because I didn't have a PS5 for the longest time. But anyways, we'll talk about the original and the remake slash reimagining. I'm gonna start by saying I actually like the reimagining slash remake more than the original. And before you start spamming, let me say that's not to say the original is bad. The original is quite good. And I understand why people don't were disappointed by the remake, and I'm in a minority opinion on that. But the reason I do is because I feel the gameplay is just better than the original. It's more. It felt to me more fluid. The controls are better. Add Mr. Zircon, so that's always a plus. Can't go wrong with that. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, they have the amount of planets you can go to, but I'm going to counter that by saying a lot of the planets you went to in the original had fuck all to do with them. You'd go in there for about 10, 20 minutes, find one or two things, leave, and then never come back. So instead of adding those, I appreciate that they fleshed out and improved the planets that they did return, as well as fleshing out the story quite a bit. Though, speaking of the story, there is a couple things I will say that is a negative about the reboot. Or remake, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, what they did to Chairman Drex was kind of stupid. Because he was definitely a proper villain in the original, and this one is more of a... I guess more of a stepping stone to shoehorn in Dr. Nefarious. Though it was kind of nice to see how Dr. Nefarious got injured to the point where he became a robot. Which they still could have done without nerfing Chairman Drex the way they did. Though, I will counter that as well by saying I think Quark's villainy was handled a lot better in the remake than it was the original. Because the original is just like, I'm jealous, so I'm going to go full-on villain. And it was very ham-fisted. And that's not to say it was like particularly great in the remake either, but being sort of like, oh, I realize I fucked up, but there's nothing I can do about it now, was a better stance, better position to put him in. And kind of rehabilitate him in through the ending. Although that does leave a discrepancy with the second game, because the second game he's still a unapologetic villain. So I kind of wish they had remade the second one as well to address that. Honestly, all three of them would have been nice, but they ain't gonna do that. And I will also say that the remake does not handle Ratchet and Clank's relationship well, because in the original it's just like, we're being forced together, and now we hate each other, and they have to learn to cope with that before like they actually start developing an actual relationship. Whereas in the remake, it's just like, hey, you need help, let's be friends. It's like, ugh. Yeah, that was clearly done for the movie's pacing. I don't think the movie was bad, though it was kind of forgettable, but it is what it is, I guess. But anyways, The only other thing I could point out as a negative for the gameplay for the remake is the fact that it was 30 FPS, but playing it on a PS4 Pro or the PS5 does boost it to 60, so again, buttery smooth. I don't know how the original PS2 version performed, but the remaster is fine. But again, the reboot just had better controls. Just, again, I will admit I'm biased because it's the first one I played, and it got me to really fall in love with the series, so reboot gets an S, original gets an A. Going Commando was probably the weakest of the two PS2 games. It honestly felt like filler in a lot of ways. It didn't really improve a whole lot. It was just kind of more of the same. It definitely had more weapons and a bit more uniqueness to them. The story was kind of stupid. And honestly, like, the game's good, but it's kind of forgettable in comparison to some of the better entries. And again, just the fact that it was just like mostly more of the same and minor improvements makes it kind of hard to talk about this one. Especially because it's got a better game before it and a better game after it. So I'm going to say tie B for that one. Up Your Arsenal is easily my second favorite game of the series. Very close to the reboot. Like, it took everything well the first one and did, and the second one improved upon and made it much better. It's a longer game. The story was the best of the three. It looked better. It controlled better. I think this is the first one that had proper twin stick strafing like the more modern ones do. I think. It's been a while since I played those. Had the best variety of weapons. Had the best soundtrack out of all of them. So it did wrap up the story. The stories pretty well, or at least the original stories pretty well. Added Dr. Nefarious, who's probably one of the most iconic villains. It made Captain Quark an actual character again. So, and just the scale of it was just so much better than its previous entries. So I'm going to say this is also an S. Deadlocked was kind of a weird one. It's a spin-off, but it's also kind of not, because I get the feeling like that it is a canon entry, but I don't know, maybe somebody can correct me on that. I actually played they actually did remaster this one and put it as a standalone download on PSN for the PS3. That's how I played it, and even then I think I got it on sale. I think I paid like 10 or 15 bucks for it. So I can understand how anybody who played the original version of this, especially paying full price, might not have liked it. Because they don't even call it Ratchet and Clank, they just call it Ratchet Deadlocked. It is an arena shooter. A more multiplayer focused one, but it does come with a proper single player campaign, thankfully. The story isn't that important, but I will give it credit. They dialed up the combat pretty well, so it does play surprisingly fluid for a PS2 spin-off shooter. It does get a bit repetitive in the campaign, but again, I don't know why I enjoyed this one. I'm not gonna say it was a great game, but it was fine for what it was. It's low B, I guess. I do enjoy it. I do find the post credits, the post credit part of the ending to be rather amusing, though. But I don't think you really have to play that one. You can skip it if you want to, but again, 15 bucks in the PSN if you have a PS3 isn't bad. And you could probably get the PS2 version dirt cheap. Now for the one, I don't know if this is also a spin-off or not. Size Matters. This was originally a PSP game, but then ported to the PS2. I actually played the PS2 version. And the PS2 version is fine. Like, I don't see any issues with it. But I can see how it could have been problematic on the PSP. Like, I want to think it was fine. But only having one stick might have really hindered it in the ways I just don't know about. Okay, this is not as good as the original trilogy, obviously, and it's probably not as good as the majority of the ones that came out after it. But again, it's fine. I would say it's on par with Going Commando, to be honest. Maybe slightly worse. The story was pretty forgettable, but I don't know. Like, it was inoffensive. You know, it had a decent weapon set. It had a decent amount of content. For a handheld game, it did pretty well. And again, scaling it up on the PS2 is how I played it. And it did look a bit worse. It was kind of like when they ported Silent Hill Origins to the PS2. Whereas, like, yeah, this is a PSP version that hasn't really been upscaled. And thankfully, unlike Origins, this did not come... from what I could tell, it did not come with any new bugs, so... B tier again. It's fine. If you pass it up, I'd honestly recommend it. You could probably find the PS2 version for fairly cheap. The other PSP game, on the other hand... I did not like this game at all. I'm pretty sure this is 100% non-canonical, because I honestly couldn't even tell if this was like... if the plot of this game was like, half of it was a movie, was like supposed to be his role as like a movie star or something. Or if this was like unironically supposed to be an actual story of him becoming a secret agent. That's how forgettable that game's plot was. Meanwhile, Ratchet's getting prison raped for some reason. Yeah. So, the gameplay is terrible, I'm going to start off with. The level design is atrocious. I don't know what they did to the controls, but I was having issues with them, especially playing Clank. Like, Ratchet segments were okay, but they were few and far between. Like, it looked... I don't know if this is also part of the porting process, because, again, I played the PS2 version, but it looked really muddy and blurry. Like, I cannot think of a single positive thing to say about this game. It wasn't funny, the story sucked, the controls sucked, the level design sucked. The whole concept was just stupid. So, into the F tier you go. I do not recommend anybody play that, because again, I'm pretty sure it's not canonical. And it barely feels like a Ratchet and Clank game. Like, even more than Deadlock did. Now, the first of the PS3 games... well, I guess it's more of a quadrilogy, but PS3 trilogy, Tools of Destruction. I always hear mixed things on this one. Like, I hear some people say it's like one of the weakest main entries, and I'm just like, why? Like, I can understand if people don't think it's as good as the original trilogy, but for me, I thought it was pretty good. It introduced Mr. Zircon, because again, that's always a plus, even though his lines are a bit more repetitive than the later entries. Level design was pretty good. This one really improved upon the controls to where it really felt like they modernized it properly, because I had no issues with the controls, unlike some of the older games. It looked pretty good for its time. I will say, like, one of the main issues is probably the fact that it's 30 FPS, but I'm pretty sure all the PS3 games are like that. Would have been nice if these games got remastered, but again, I don't know why they didn't do that. Like, they could have easily put, like, all three of these games plus the that weird downloadable Quest for Booty game onto, like, one collection and just barely put any effort into it and just do one of those cheap remasters while they do is upscale it and boost the performance. But, you know, they ain't going to do that, because we're in the age these days of where you have to pay full price for one or two games, and that's it. And they take forever to come out for whatever reason. Because, you know, remaster is really that hard. Anyways, bitching about that aside, I don't see why this game was apparently controversial. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I'm going to say it's an A tier. Like, that's probably also my favorite of the PS3 games. Quest for Booty was... I don't know why this is a standalone. This felt like a DLC for Tools of Destruction. It was short, very forgettable. You barely had enough time to really get familiar with your weapons and upgrades. I want to say this is only like 2 or 3 hours long. Which, again, I don't know why this wasn't just a DLC. Again, because you spent so little time in this game, it's just so forgettable. Like, I barely remember anything about it. I'm just going to say it's a C tier, just because of how forgettable and short it is. Like, if it was a DLC, I probably would have been kinder to it. I mean, I know it's only like 10 or 15 bucks, but come on. Rift in Time, or sorry, Crack in Time. This is like the one everybody seems to point to as being one of the best ones, apart from the original, and I'm just like, I don't know about that one either. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a pretty good game, but it does improve in mod tools and destruction in a lot of ways, but my biggest stickler with this one is the Clank sections. Now, I know the Clank sections in some of the previous games have also been pretty weak, considering they're like really heavy puzzle breakups to the normal combat and exploration looping you do as Ratchet, which would be fine if they were a bit shorter, but like if there were more but less, if that makes sense, more of them, but they didn't take as long to go through. But cracking times are the worst. Those time puzzles were not fun, and easily the most tedious parts of the game. Plus, the space station was, or whatever, space time station, whatever you want to call it, wasn't particularly fun to explore, and Sigmund is annoying as shit. It's like, I'm sorry, but he was obnoxious. Good game, but this one's overrated. I'm going to say slightly better than Going Commando. Now, before we get into the third part of the PS3 trilogy, they decided to release a couple of spin-offs. One of them being a multiplayer co-op game, and the other being this weird pseudo tower defense game, which I think was... I know there's a Vita version for it, but I don't know if that came out before or at the same time, but I played the PS3 version of this as well. I don't remember if All in One also was on the Vita or not. But All for One, I did not care for. This is very heavily weighted in the co-op, so playing this as a single-player game is pretty mid. Like, I imagine if I had gotten 4 friends together and played some couch co-op, it probably would have been a fair amount of fun, but it's short, the story's stupid, the balancing's bad. The fact that it's talked down doesn't help. I don't know, I didn't care for this one. It's also very forgettable. I honestly barely remember playing this one as well. And I can't think of anybody who's talked about this game and had fond memories of it, or saying it's anything higher than mid, so I'm going to say D tier for this one. The second one I actually had more fun with, and I don't even particularly like tower defense games that much. I do kind of like the more action-y based ones, rather than the point-and-clicky pure strategy ones. But yeah, this one basically involves setting up your towers and using your characters, strategically placing your characters to be able to intercept the enemy waves, and it was a fun loop. I will admit it was a fun loop, but it was very light in content, and nobody asked for this game. Like, I could think you probably finish this game in about 4 hours. I think I paid like $20 for it, but even that felt like it was pushing it. Like, that could have been a digital-only game, and probably should have been for how light on content it is. I could say you could probably pass on this as well. Like, it's a better game than All for One, but not by a whole lot. I'm going to say C tier. I at least get that All for One was, a co-op game, so, if you're into those kind of games and you got to be able to play with, you could probably have fun with it. I don't know who Full Frontal Assault was for, other than just the fact that it's just a very okay game. Into the Nexus was a bit weird. They drop you, feels like they drop you right in the middle of the story, dealing with these characters that show up for the first time, but you're supposed to know who they are. Maybe it's because it's it has in relation to the mobile games, which I never played, and there's a reason why they're not on this list. I don't put mobile games on these lists. But it felt like it skipped a game. It's kind of like how Halo Infinite felt like it skipped a game. I'm just like, who are these characters and what's going on half the time? It did improve. Again, don't get me wrong, it did improve on a lot of things. This is probably, combat-wise, this is probably the best of the 3. And it does have a great variety of weapons and upgrades to find, but it's probably... It's not as short as the spin-offs or Quest for Booty, but it's probably shorter than both A Crack in Time and Tools of Destruction. And the story itself is fine, but again, just the fact that you're dropped in the middle of it and never really, like, explained what's going on or who these characters are was really jarring to me. But I still say it's a decent game. I would say mid-B for this one. But it's kind of a shame that they never, instead of, they kind of rebooted the series instead of, like, building upon that last game. Because I felt like they skipped a game and they had another game to go. And maybe that's just me. Now, Rift Apart. Again, I didn't play this one until about a year ago. I saw so much hype for this one in the glowing reviews. And I'm just like, it looks like another Ratchet and Clank game, which is fine, but, like, there were some questionable decisions regarding it, and it sure didn't justify buying a whole ass console for. I mean, granted, I'm going to say I'm talking out my ass for that one, because that is the primary reason I bought a PS5 for, was for Astrobot. But, you know, being able to play this game on the console, because I do not trust Japanese PC ports, nor do I trust Sony's PC ports. And yes, I know Ratchet and Clank is not Japanese, but Sony is a Japanese company, and I've heard that port is not that good. Or the Steam port, anyway. Anyways, I will say this is a very good-looking game. The cinematics are quite fluid. The environments are very well detailed. I feel like they put a little bit too much time into that, though. Because there are some really weird bugs that never seem to got ironed out. At one point, I got stuck by a door or force field that was supposed to open when I killed all the enemies, and I killed the enemies that didn't happen. I had to reset the game. I had a couple of instances of weird glitches. Like, I don't think I ever fell through the world, but there was a couple of times where something looked like it was a solid object you could jump on, and the game's just like, nope, fall through it. And then you die to the lava or the lake or of goop or whatever. The swamp was kind of a weak area. I don't particularly like riding those freaking worm things. But other than a couple of low points like that, the game was quite solid. The combat was fluid. There are a decent variety of weapons and upgrades to get. I don't think it was as good as the reboot, but I'd probably say not quite as good as Tools of Destruction in my opinion, but it did feel like a good, proper, how a sequel should be. You know, it doesn't reinvent the wheel, or it's a proper safe sequel, I should say. It doesn't really reinvent the wheel, but it improves pretty well on what came before it. The story was kind of iffy in my opinion. Like, there are some weird twists and turns I'm just like, huh? And I don't know why we so desperate to introduce female protagonists and then just make a proper one instead. Just like, let's literally take Ratchet and make him female, and just why? You probably spend more of the game playing as her, in which case you might as well just like you might as well just called it Ratchet and Clank Rivet's Adventure or something. Like, I probably would have had a bit more respect for that. Because she plays exactly the same as Ratchet, so what was the point of swapping between the two? I don't know. I don't particularly mind Rivet. But it's just, again, you should have just picked the lane and stuck with it. And there are some real kind of weird parts of the writing, just like tries to be funny and it's just not. Like that infamous women in respectable positions of power in the pirate base. It's just like, huh? Okay. But if it sounds like I'm ragging on this game, like, I'm just kind of pointing out my nitpicks with it and why I'm, like, not putting it with the best of the best, because it is a pretty good game. Not the best game, there are better games, but it is pretty good. I'm going to say low A for this one. Would not recommend buying a PS5 for it. Just get the Steam version if you don't have one, and if your computer can handle it, because, again, from what I heard, it's not the best port. But yeah, supposedly we're getting an supposedly we're getting another entry in like 5 years, and it's just again why it should not take that long to make these kinds of games. They're not. This is this is not some ginormous open world that's like GTA size. They could have like crapped out a spin off or like made a sequel in 5 or 6 years and had it out like this year or something. But it is what it is. Hopefully the next game will be good. Knowing Insomniac and the direction they'd be going, though, I will hold my reservations for that. But maybe if I keep my expectations low, I will be pleasantly surprised, like I was with Rift Apart. But anyway, yeah, I maybe jumped late. I jumped on the Ratchet and Clank train late, but again, I fell in love with it with that reboot, and I enjoyed the entirety of the PS3 trilogy. I like the original trilogy as well quite a bit. And apart from a couple of crappy spin-offs, it's a solid series.